You know that strange kind of silence you only hear in deep woods? The kind that makes you feel like the trees are paying attention instead of just standing there. That was exactly what Alex and his cousin Mark felt on the first night of their camping trip. They picked a small clearing beside an old trail that barely existed anymore. The space was just enough for their tent and a fire pit. But the fire pit looked a little too clean. The wood pieces were arranged like someone had used it earlier that day and walked away without disturbing anything. Even before they unpacked the tent, Alex mentioned that the air felt crowded. Not in a supernatural sense, more like someone had been sitting there a minute before they arrived. The dirt around the pit was soft, with fresh pressure marks, and there were boot prints that did not match any of their shoes. It reminded them of walking into a room right after someone else had left. Everything felt recently touched. Still, they brushed it off. The spot was on a public trail. People camped here. The weird feeling was probably just their brains overthinking the silence. But the real problem started around midnight. They were sitting by the fire, talking casually about work and random stuff, when the woods suddenly went silent. Not quieter, silent. Every insect, every distant rustle, every small sound just stopped at the same time. It was like someone hit a mute button on the entire forest. And when the world goes that quiet all at once, your brain instantly knows something is off. Then the footsteps started. They were not far away, not moving around in the distance. These were slow, steady footsteps circling behind the tree line around their campsite. Alex first assumed it was a deer or maybe some other animal, until he realized the steps were too rhythmic. They were not wandering, they were pacing, almost like whoever or whatever it was taking careful, measured steps around them. Mark reached for the flashlight as quietly as he could, but before he even turned it on, the footsteps stopped, and something exhaled. The sound was not quite human and not quite animal. It was like someone trying to whisper without knowing how to make the right sounds. A soft, strained breath that felt too close. Alex whispered, trying not to panic, "Dude, don't move." Right then, the fire popped, shooting a small burst of light across the clearing, and in that brief flicker, they saw a shape standing between two trees. Not the full figure, just a silhouette, tall, too thin, holding perfectly still, like a tree that had decided to grow in the shape of a person. When the flames lowered, the shape leaned slightly, almost as if it were listening to their breathing. Alex later said that the figure did not look like a real person, but more like something trying to mimic one. The proportions were off, the head tilted just a little too far, the shoulders looked uneven, like they were positioned wrong. They both froze, barely breathing for what felt like an entire minute. The figure did not blink, did not sway, did not move at all. Then, without a sound, it backed away into the darkness, not walking, not turning, just fading from sight until it was gone. But the silence didn't last long. A twig snapped behind them again. Same distance, same kind of slow, deliberate pressure. Only this time, it was on the opposite side of the clearing. That was the moment the cousins grabbed their bags and hurried into the tent, zipping it shut even though they knew it offered almost no protection. Inside the tent, their breathing grew shaky as they tried to convince themselves it was an animal, a very weird, very tall animal. Then something touched the tent wall. A slow, dragging motion moved from one corner to the other. Not like a paw, not like a branch. It felt like a finger tracing the cloth. A finger that was too long and too smooth, sliding over the fabric without any bumps where joints should be. Alex held his breath until his lungs burned. Mark tried to shine the flashlight through the tent wall, but the beam flickered weakly, like something outside was blocking most of the light. And then a whisper came from the thin fabric beside Alex's ear. "Still here." The voice did not sound like it came from a throat. It sounded airy, as if the wind itself was trying to copy a whisper. Not threatening, not shouting, just present. They stayed trapped in that tent until daylight. When the sun finally rose, they crawled out carefully, expecting to see footprints all around their tent. But what they found was worse. The prints did not circle the tent. They led out from underneath it, as if something had crawled under the tent floor during the night and stayed there while they slept. There were long drag marks under the fabric, like something had pressed upward from beneath them. They packed up in less than 5 minutes and left the area without looking back. To this day, Alex refuses to camp anywhere isolated. He will only go to campgrounds with plenty of people, lights, and noise. He says he's not afraid of darkness or the woods. He's afraid of silence. That silent moment when everything stops at once. Because now he knows what can slip into that quiet, and he never wants to hear that breath behind him again.
This next story comes from a guy named Ethan, who went on a solo camping trip to clear his head for a few days. If you have ever camped alone, you already know how different the woods feel when it is just you and the night. Every sound becomes louder. Every small snap feels like it has intention behind it. And every shadow looks like it has a place to be. On his second night, Ethan set up his tent near a quiet lake. The surface of the water was smooth like glass, and the moon was bright enough that he barely needed his lantern. The whole scene felt peaceful. Calm breeze, soft waves, the kind of place where you think nothing bad could ever happen. But that peaceful feeling did not last long. It started with a whistle. Not a normal whistle, not a tune or a melody. It was more like a bird sound, being copied by someone who had never actually heard a real bird before. The pitch was slightly off. The rhythm was too slow, too spaced out, almost like the bird was trying to get his attention and see if he would respond. At first, Ethan assumed it was just one of those weird nighttime creatures making new sounds. But then the whistle moved, and it moved in a way no bird should be able to move. The sound circled the lake. One moment it was across the water, the next moment it was behind him, then to his left. Each whistle came from a new spot every few seconds, and each time it shifted, it came a little closer, a little clearer. When the whistling reached the tree line behind his tent, it suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was heavy, not peaceful at all. It almost felt like the trees were waiting for something. Then came a crunch. Footsteps. Slow ones. Ethan, in a moment of panic mixed with curiosity, called out, "Hello?" He later said this was the worst decision he had made in a long time, because the reply that came back was not a whistle. It was his own voice saying, "Hello." The same tone, same pitch, same nervous edge. It was like something in the woods had recorded him and played it back perfectly. Ethan grabbed his lantern and pointed the light toward the tree line. The darkness seemed to swallow the beam. He saw no figure, no movement, nothing obviously threatening. But he did see two tiny orange reflections low to the ground. They were spaced too far apart to be normal eyes, almost like two small lights hovering close to the forest floor. The reflections blinked out, and then the breathing started. Not his breathing. Something was copying him. Every inhale he took, every exhale. The timing matched perfectly. It was like the unseen thing was trying to learn him, mimic him, understand how he sounded. Ethan slowly backed toward the water, thinking the open space might be safer than whatever was waiting inside the trees. But as soon as he reached the shore, something behind him whispered. Not a copied word, a real whisper. "Don't look." The whisper had a strange tone, soft, calm, like advice, which, of course, made Ethan turn around instantly. Behind one of the trees, half hidden in the shadows, stood a tall figure. Its arms were long enough to reach below its knees. The body looked stretched, as if someone had pulled it upward. The face did not look natural either. It looked carved, smooth in some places, uneven in others, like someone had tried to sculpt a human shape from a material that did not want to cooperate. Its mouth did not open. It simply stretched wider, almost like an elastic shape. The figure leaned forward, and then the whistling started again. Only this time the sound cracked and bent like air moving through something damaged or hollow. Ethan ran, full speed. He pushed his kayak into the lake with so much force that he nearly flipped it. The second the kayak hit the water, the whistling behind him turned into a sharp, metallic scream, high-pitched, angry, echoing across the lake. But Ethan did not look back. He paddled without stopping until he reached the opposite shore. The moment he touched land, everything went quiet again. The woods sounded normal. The water was calm. The wind returned, as if nothing had happened on the other side of the lake. Ethan packed up at sunrise and left immediately. Later, when he told someone local about the experience, they told him the lake had old stories attached to it. Strange disappearances, campers hearing someone copy their voice, nighttime whistling that never came from any known bird. People had a name for whatever lived near the lake. They called it the Whistler, a creature said to mimic sound to confuse people and lure them deeper into the trees. Ethan says the creature itself was terrifying, but that's not what bothers him the most. He says the real fear hits him at night, long after that trip, when he tries to fall asleep because every once in a while, when his room is quiet, he hears a soft exhale from just outside his window, and it matches his breathing perfectly, as if something is still practicing the sound it learned from him that night.
This last story comes from a couple named Tyler and Jenna, who decided to go camping deep inside a national forest. They wanted a quiet weekend away from everything, and this spot definitely delivered. It was the kind of place where you do not just lose your phone signal, you start to forget that the rest of the world even exists. No cars, No voices, no distant hum of anything human. Just trees, sky, and silence. When they arrived, the campground was completely empty. Not unusual for that part of the forest, but still unsettling. Every fire ring looked freshly cleaned, almost as if someone had prepared them for visitors who never showed up. There was no leftover ash, no trash, not even tire tracks. It felt abandoned in a way that did not make sense. Clean, but not maintained, like the last person who camped there packed up in a hurry. They set up their tent, cooked dinner, and tried to shake off the strange emptiness. But as the sun went down, the forest took on a different tone. The quiet felt heavier. Still, they went to sleep, telling themselves it was just nature doing nature things. Around midnight, they woke up to something rustling through the bushes behind their tent. At first, they assumed it was a small animal. But then the rustling shifted into slow, heavy footsteps. These steps did not sound like a deer or a bear. They sounded spaced apart, deliberate, like someone walking carefully. Tyler whispered for Jenna to stay still while he reached for the flashlight. Before he could even turn it on, the footsteps stopped completely. The sudden silence was worse than the sound itself. Then came a tap. A single, light tap against the side of their tent. Then another, and another. Each one perfectly spaced, almost rhythm-like. Tap, 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 as if someone was testing the tent fabric with one finger. Tyler finally unzipped the tent and shined the flashlight toward the sound. Nothing. No person, no animal. Just still woods and the faint outline of trees. But the tapping continued. Only now, it was coming from the opposite side of the tent. He whipped the flashlight toward the new spot, but once again there was nothing there. That was when they realized something truly unsettling. The tapping was not coming from outside the tent. It was coming from underneath it. The ground sheet shifted slightly as something pressed upward, dragging along the fabric like a finger tracing a line toward the entrance flap. Tyler felt the pressure move beneath his hand when he touched the floor, and he jerked back instantly. He looked at Jenna and whispered, "We're leaving now." They grabbed what they could and sprinted to their car. Once inside, they locked the doors and tried to catch their breath. The forest around them went strangely quiet again. Too quiet. No wind rustling the leaves, no branches creaking, nothing. It felt like the whole place was holding its breath with them. Then, something brushed the passenger side window. Not a knock, not claws, just a long, slow smear sliding across the glass. Whatever made the smear did not have a clear shape. It was more like a shadow with mass, something that moved but did not have a defined outline, as if it refused to reflect light properly. Tyler started the engine immediately. They did not wait to see if anything else would happen. They drove out of there as fast as the narrow trail allowed, leaving their tent and gear behind. The next morning, once the sun was up and the fear had settled into something they could rationalize, they returned to retrieve their belongings. But what they found made them decide they would never camp in a remote area again. Their tent was ripped open down the middle. The cuts were too clean and straight to be made by claws or teeth. It looked like someone had sliced through the fabric effortlessly, like cutting paper. Around the entrance of the tent were prints pressed deep into the dirt. They weren't footprints or paw prints. Each mark was a perfect circle, about the size of a cup bottom, spaced unevenly as if whatever made them did not walk like a human or an animal. Just round impressions, some deep, some shallow, leading in random directions. Tyler reported everything to a nearby ranger station. The ranger listened quietly and then said something that stuck with them even more than the strange prints. According to the ranger, Every few years, campers in that area pack up suddenly and leave without explanation. Sometimes people abandon their camps entirely. Sometimes tents are found slashed and empty, with no sign of who stayed there. Other times, the campsite is simply gone, like no one ever set up there in the first place. The ranger did not offer theories or warnings beyond one simple line. If the woods ever go silent like that again, don't wait to find out why. Just leave. To this day, Tyler and Jenna refuse to camp anywhere without lights, noise, and other humans nearby. They say the forest itself felt like it was watching them. Not with eyes, just with presence. And the tapping under the tent is something they still think about. A quiet reminder that not everything in the woods moves above the ground. Some things move under it too. If you made it to the end, you're officially built different. Make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more true outdoor, hiking, and wilderness horror stories. And if you've got a personal scary experience, send it to the email in the description. I'd love to feature it. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.